Okay, good morning or afternoon or evening, whenever you're doing this lesson. This one is on bayonet charge. So, firstly, you should now have feedback from your question on lesson 3, the comparison that you did. So we're going to do a little bit of green pen time. Obviously, you don't have to do it in green pen. You may if you wish. But basically, I just want you to look at the feedback I've given you and rework some parts of it. You don't have to rewrite the full response, but for the first 20 minutes of this lesson, I would like you to really have a go at that. And obviously we're used to doing this. We're used to reviewing our own work now and improving on our own work. So it's just exactly the same as we do it in class. You will take the feedback, the questions, I will prompt you, and they're not just extra tasks, they're just for you to edit what you've already done and improve on that. Hopefully the next time you come to do a comparison piece, you can kind of keep that in mind and your responses will get more detailed as we do more of them. So if you haven't sent me it, therefore you haven't got the feedback, so please make sure you go back to lesson 3 and do that task as soon as possible. Also, try and have a look at all this success criteria. Remember, firstly, that this is an aid. This isn't it's not a structure that you need to follow. All your paragraphs should kind of be different, and you should just be able to write it with your own flow. But these are just ideas to try and pack into some of your paragraphs to make sure that you are hitting those assessment objectives like we explained in lesson 3. And so by identifying kind of which parts of these you struggle with, so for example, if you say, oh, I couldn't really think of any alternative interpretations, then when we come to, it says lesson 5 here, when we come to lesson 6, you'll be doing another one of these responses, and then you can keep that in mind and really try and work on improving that part of your response. Obviously, if you need any help, please email me. I'll get back to you as soon as possible. But please just make sure that you are giving me specifics to what you're struggling with. Please don't just say, I don't get this. Please just make sure you are kind of saying what it is you don't get, and then I can kind of help you a little bit more. Okay, so can you pause here? And like I say, spend a good 20 minutes kind of reviewing your own work and making it as best as you possibly can. Okay, so today's poem is Bayonet Charge. So first thing I need you to do is pause again the video here, read the poem, and make your initial interpretation. So what do you think it's about? What's the meaning? What's going on in it? And then please read about the poem. Yeah, use the internet, use Google, take other people's interpretations, and almost kind of teach yourself the poem to a certain degree. So you're adding things to your interpretation, and that will help you kind of explore alternatives when you're writing. So pause here. Once you've done that, you can carry on. So context-wise, it's a World War I poem, a bayonet charge. Ted Hughes wasn't born until 1930. His father did fight in the conflict, but obviously someone being born around this time, their early childhood years are going to be pretty overwhelmed with war and the effects of that as well. So it's not surprising why Hughes chose kind of this subject matter. And just to kind of give you an idea, this is a picture of a bayonet. It's a rifle with some sort of blade on the end. And in your history lessons, you'll have done more about this, I'm sure. But these are kind of the trenches. What they would do, they would use these for cover. And enemy trenches might be 100 meters away, 200 meters, something like that. And a bayonet charge would be literally these men going over the top and just running at the other trench with these bayonets in hand. So obviously, as you can imagine, there'd be kind of a lot of deaths in there. It would be a very frightening experience. And there's a little website down here. There's an interesting article about trench warfare. So if you've got time, please do give that a look on that. Another thing as well, you've known about kind of propaganda and people, the government in particular, trying to get people to go to war. And if you just look at this one, for example, this ties into the poem, England expects every man to do his duty. So we think about the reasons why people went to war, and it was because of this idea of that you are fighting for your country, all right, and fighting for the king at the time as well. So king and country, it was a people's duty to do this. So think about now, obviously, you might have different thoughts about that, or something else about if that's right. Is this idea of patriotism? Should we still have this? Should we still have this idea of a duty to serve our country, or has time changed? So have a think about that. So we get into the poem. So it starts off, suddenly he awoke and was running. So we're focusing on this one soldier, and straight away we are kind of in the action. Now, the technique we call it is in medias res, which is basically just the Latin term of in the middle of things. All right, it's starting in the middle. We usually kind of see this technique done in novels when it gets straight into the action, but we can use this term to describe how this poem starts as well. So try and learn this term. So for your subject terminology, if you're going to talk about this poem, then certainly useful in there. So we're straight into the action, just as the soldier is. So we can see kind of what's going. We're doing this charge with him. So suddenly he awoke and was running. Awoke, I suppose that could be literal. All right, they could have been resting and straight away they're getting into it. Or as we'll see later in the poem, this could kind of be awoke to the realities of what is actually going on, and his mind almost becomes a bit clear as we go through this poem. So suddenly he awoke and was running, raw seemed hot khaki, his sweat heavy. So we've got that repetition of raw, which obviously means something that's quite sore or painful. So could that repetition be emphasizing the continuous pain that these soldiers are in? And as you can see, this again, to go with this idea of that we're experiencing this with the soldier, there's this alliteration in here. So he awoke and was running in hot khaki, his sweat heavy. We've got that sound kind of being repeated. That's kind of sounds like an exhalation of breath, almost like we can hear this soldier's breath as he's running, and like we're going through this with him. Stumbling across a field of clods towards a green hedge that dazzles with rifle fire. So we've got this natural imagery here of this green hedge, but it's actually dazzled with rifle fire. So we've got this contrast here, that we've got the natural hedge, and then we've got this unnatural rifle fire, and it kind of links to this idea that war is unnatural. And Hughes kind of uses a lot of natural imagery throughout this as well to kind of highlight that idea that humans have become kind of away from nature, and war just seems so kind of unnatural. And the personification kind of adds to this. Bullets smacking the belly out of the air. It's almost, are we kind of destroying nature and the peace that should be happening because of whatever conflicts people are kind of fighting for. He loved a rifle numb as a smashed arm. So we've got a simile here. And it's kind of comparing this rifle to a smashed arm. So almost like this, the rifle has kind of become a part of him. The weaponry is becoming natural to men, and so almost kind of like the men have become the weapons. The patriotic tear that had brimmed in his eye, sweating like molten iron from the center of his chest. So that patriotic tear, we can assume that was maybe when he'd first enlisted and he was doing his duty. Almost maybe a tear of pride that he was doing the right thing. So those are the reasons he's kind of gone to war for the king, the country, and to do everyone proud. And so at this point, it's talking about how he was patriotic, but it had brimmed in his eye. So it's interesting to note that patriotism or that patriotic tear is not there anymore. Sweating like molten iron from the center of his chest. In bewilderment, then, he almost stopped. So we've got this kind of sudden realization there. He almost stopped, and this is where he's starting to think what is going on, and the soldier seems to be starting to question everything. In what cold clockwork of the stars and the nations was he the hand pointing that second? It's almost like he's become part of a machine, that he's kind of the hand of a clock. And again, this idea that war is not natural. And the fact that it says the stars and the nation. So when we think about the stars, we think about kind of fate. So is it fate's fault? All right, was this always going to happen? Or is it the nations, people who have kind of made these decisions, have kind of turned him into this cog in a machine? He was running like a man who has jumped up in the dark and runs, listening between his footfalls for the reason of his still running. So again, even as he's running, he's thinking about why am I doing this? Me, what has this war kind of got to do with me? And I suppose it's that fear that comes with the realization that he might not be alive for much longer, and the fact that he's got to kind of try and take away other people's lives who are just like him. Of his still running, his foot hung like statuary in mid-stride. Then the shot slashed furrows, threw up a yellow hair that rolled like a flame. So we've got that enjambment between the stanzas there. You can see it goes straight into the next stanza. And like I said before, we always talk about enjambment and caesura kind of reflecting pace. So is this kind of showing how fast this is moving and kind of the chaos that's kind of going on around this soldier. And then we've got this natural imagery, this hair that rolled like a flame and crawled in a threshing circle, its mouth wide open, silent, its eyes standing out. So we've got this kind of striking imagery there about kind of what's happening. We've got this animal, and again it links to that idea of kind of war, and humans are kind of maybe ruining nature. And yellow has connotations of coward. A yellow hair is quite an interesting image. And so we do say that yellow or yellow belly is a coward, someone who kind of maybe flees. So maybe this could be, and again, like I say, we're not sure ever of these things, but could be a nod to the propaganda about people saying that you must be brave. No one can, if you tried running away, you would probably be kind of shot by your own country. So the fact that the hair is perhaps something that kind of hides away and burrows underground. Obviously, this hair has not had a good ending. So could it show something to do with that? The hair appears to be showing shock, its eyes standing out, its mouth wide open, almost like nature is kind of saying, what on earth is going on here? This is kind of barbaric. He plunged past with his bayonet toward the green hedge. King, honor, human dignity, etc., dropped like luxuries. So again, he's thinking of these reasons: king, honor, human dignity, these things that he kind of enlisted thinking these were the right reasons. And now these reasons, as he's facing what's going on, are just dropping. These reasons almost mean nothing anymore. So it links to that theme of being patriotic. And actually, what does that mean? Is there any reason for us to be patriotic, for example? To get out of that blue crackling air, his terrors touchy dynamite. And again, his terrors touchy dynamite. It is a difficult poem. There's some difficult language in there, but it's almost like he is the touchy dynamite. He is a weapon rather than a human. So again, linking to that idea that humans are kind of unnatural in the way they've turned out. And then just a note on structure then. So there's no strict rhyme scheme. There's no strict stanza length. There's lots of enjambment. There's lots of caesura. So it's kind of, we could say it's almost a chaotic structure that Hughes has created. We could link that to maybe the chaos which is ensuing on the battlefield as well. Okay then, so now I've had a look at the poem, obviously kind of pause here, go back through, make sure you've written some notes into your anthologies, and you're starting to really understand this poem and what's going on and some of the methods that Hughes has used to kind of get his point across. So there's a few tasks here for you today. There's no, obviously you've already done your green pen time, so I'm not going to make you write an essay. But have a look at these questions. I don't really need to go through them. Just pause on this screen, work your way through it, and then email me over your responses, please.